I'm Kaylie Jones, and Kaylie Jones Books is all about dedicated writers taking a stand. I'm going to be interviewing Laurie Loewenstein, author of Unmentionables, which is the flagship publication of Kaylie Jones Books. Laurie, your historical novel takes its title in part from the protagonist Marion, who is fighting for women's dress reform. What undergarments did women and men wear during 1917?
Well, around 1917, men had an easier case with the undergarments. They mostly wore a union suit or one-piece underwear that went down, the top went down to their wrists and the bottom went down to their ankles. It was sort of like tight long johns. When the war came and America entered in 1917, it started changing for the men. It became a two-piece undergarment with sleeveless top, and then the bottom only went down to the knees. The women, on the other hand, had 5 undergarments to deal with. They wore drawers, a chemise, which was like a sleeveless slip, the corset cover, and a petticoat. So altogether, when they would go out into town for shopping, they were all dressed up, it'd be about 25 pounds of clothes.
So no wonder everybody was passing out all the time, and they thought that it was hysteria, but women were carrying around in the heat like that, 25 extra pounds and all squeezed in.
Yes,
Not
exactly.
easy to get out of for sex either, I wouldn't think.
It's very restrictive.
What changes did World War I bring to the lives of women in the U.S.?
Well, when America entered the World War in 1917, tremendous changes came to women. Primarily, jobs opened up. 3 million additional women entered the workforce in that era, and they got employment in jobs that were closed to them before, and then when men were drafted, the women could step in. For example, in my novel, the woman gets a job as a trolley conductor, which no women could do that before. The women could be postal carriers. They also, because of the war, the armaments industry needed just more and more workers. So women actually got jobs in munitions factories, and that was good paying work. And they were able to feed their families, and before, when they were maybe limited to jobs like being laundresses.
One of the things that stunned me in the book was how mean and cruel the other people that worked on the men that worked on the trolleys were to the women who were coming in. Right. They were really hard on them and mean, and sort of used nasty language and felt threatened by women coming into the workforce, it seems to me.
Right. They resented the women because they felt that they were taking men's jobs, and they didn't know what would, when the soldiers came back, what would happen. And what actually did happen was all the women lost the jobs, and the men stepped back in. Women also had tremendous opportunities with the military. They were not on the front lines, but overseas they were Army nurses, and actually in the Navy, women telephone operators were actually naval, I can't think of the word, naval clerks, and they ran the telephone lines overseas. And on the home front, a huge number of women volunteered to help the war effort. In 1917, when America first entered the war, there were about 100 chapters of the Red Cross, and by the end of 1919, there were almost 4,000 chapters of the Red Cross, and most all of those members were women rolling bandages and things like that.
Fascinating. What was the process for selecting the cover art for your book? I know we went through many covers trying to find the perfect one for your novel.
Right. I was delighted that we were able to use a photo from the actual Chautauqua. It's of a group of elderly men. They're in the front row. The tent is very crowded. They're in the front row. They have long beards. They look like the town elders sitting under this tent. And they're looking sideways off at the speaker, and they look doubtful or somewhat disturbed by what they're hearing. And I like that because my protagonist, Marion, who is a dress reform activist, sort of sets the town on edge when she speaks to the town in my book. So that sort of set the tone. And then in the corner, there's a little illustration of a corset, which again speaks to what her interest is in women's dress reform.